4 o'clock. We're on time, we're punctual. No one will ever say that we are not. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining the session, Basic Neoserra Entries and Usage. My name is Ericka White, and I will be moderating this session and making sure that all the important things discussed are done by Jenny Malloy. I'm glad to be here today. I appreciate you coming. I may have to go out, and depending how many people we get in here in the next few minutes, I may have to find some people from some other sessions and bring them in here because this is a very important topic, and there are many people that need assistance in this area. Let me say that. So good thing it's recorded though as well. We can send it out. But I'm pleased to have Jenny Malloy with me. I can't say enough about Jenny. We were able to bring Jenny into the fold when we received the supplemental funding from the CARES dollars, because we've had a number of administrators in our CRM for the system, which is Neoserra, and there was no uniformity, and SBA changes rules all the time. There's just a lot going on within the system, and we knew that even though we were entering information into the system, we weren't doing a great job of making sure that it was as accurate as it needed to be, as well as making sure that we could pull information from it as we needed to in order to tell our story. This system is vital to telling our story to our stakeholders of the great work and activity that is done within this network each and every day. So just to let you guys know, please, if you can, and if you're able and in a safe place to do so, turn your cameras on. I want this to be interactive. I want you to be able to ask questions as we go through the presentation. We will try to leave more. Generally, we usually try to leave 10 minutes for questions. We're going to try to leave more for this session because we know that there's a lot of actual application questions that you as the user may have that we can go ahead and address right now, and knowing that it will be helpful for others. So with that being said, first, Jenny, just go ahead and introduce yourself and a little background and tell them how you're a data nerd. I mean, a lover of all information.
Yes, data, love it.
You're muted though. You've ruined it. It's done. You're muted. This isn't working out.
I'm not muted.
You're still muted. We can't hear you.
I'm not muted. Great.
I can't hear you. Can anyone else hear her?
I can hear just fine.
Now I can hear her.
Oh, it's Ericka, not me.
My speaker went out. State equipment. I'm sorry.
So for those of you that do not know me, my name is Jenny Malloy. I am with the state office as data integrity manager. I've been with the network for a little over a year. As Ericka mentioned, I love data. I am somewhat of a data nerd, as she likes to call me, or a data dork. It's just my wheelhouse. I feel comfortable there, and I love crunching numbers, analyzing things, and finding solutions. On that note, even though I've been with the network for a while, I learn something new every day with Neoserra. It just has so many different capabilities, different tricks and tips, and while I'm comfortable in it, I still feel like there's just so much more that I don't know. So throughout this session, you may have questions that I don't have answers to, but I will assure you that I'll take your notes down and get the answers.
Thanks, Jenny. Okay, before we get into the information, I'd like to go ahead and call on people and find out what your role is within the center, how long you've been utilizing Neoserra, and how comfortable you feel in the system. Lydia, don't worry, day 2, I'm gonna let you slide. I'm gonna move past you. I'll ask you again in a few months. Chris Youngmark, why don't you go ahead and share with us?
Sure. So as the assistant director here at the SPDC, I'm in Neoserra every day. It's traditionally, thus far, has been primarily entering counseling sessions and just sort of managing the interactions that I've had with clients. I'm starting to get more exposed to the ability of the tool to produce reports and results and to be able to interpret that data. So I'm sort of in that phase where I'm putting a lot in, but I'm not yet drawing it out to make decisions. But yeah, just like Jenny said, learning something new every day and different ways to look at things too.
Great, thank you, Chris. Earl.
Hello, Ericka.
Hello.
16 months. I'm the director of the Small Business Development Center at Danville Area Community College. Started at the end of January last year. Pretty much a smaller community college center in the bottom half of the state. Pretty much do all the different pieces with Neoserra that I have learned. I definitely learn something, Jenny, more every day. As I use it more, I get used to it more. I like to, how I look at the reports and how I can embellish them to make them hit more targets. I've tried to work with all that. I'm continuing to learn every day. Just like Chris said, it's just one of those ones where there's a lot of pieces, a lot of pieces to the puzzle.
Great, thanks, Earl.
Mm-hmm.
Maria Ramos.
Hi, yes, I am pretty new and I have been, having some challenges with the Neoserra system, but I think I have been receiving great information from Jenny, Eric and Ericka, but I would like, to improve myself and get some more knowledge about it. So yes, and that's what I'm here. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Dear Marty, how are you?
I get myself unmuted here. Hi, everybody. I'm Marty Whelan. I'm with the SBDC at SIU Edwardsville. I've been there about 4.5 years now. I learn something new about Neoserra at least once a week, it feels like. And I also feel like I don't know anything about it some days.
How do we?
Sometimes I have thank you, Jenny. I have my list I have to look at, but, these must be real new people because I'm like, well, who is this? Anyway, because, we get the stuff that people have just come in on. But, we found some things about it that were set as defaults that maybe weren't correct about how they were handled as defaults. And when we get people registered and those kinds of things. So it's, there's a lot of adjustment from all of us, I think.
Great, thanks, Marty. Definitely. David, Shawnee. You're muted. Having mic and issues today. Okay, we're gonna pass David up. Let's go to Catherine.
Hello. So I work at the Women's Business Development Center. I'm fairly new. I started with the center last July. And I was recently made the official PTech director a few months ago. And so I use Neoserra, probably not as much as I should because we do use another system, outcome tracker, and we have our data person who does most of the Neoserra stuff. However, I have dabbled in it, and that's kind of why I'm here today, because I want to learn more about it, because it wasn't previously used as much as it should have been. And so I don't really have much background on it. So that's kind of why I'm here.
Okay, great, thanks for joining.
Yes.
Jeff Whitlow, Greater Englewood. Okay, Jeff, you're muted too.
You can hear me now, right?
Yes, now we can. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, how are you?
Just fine.
Jeff with Greater Englewood Community Development Corporation. I started last week. So you're gonna have to come to me next year, 6 months, next month, something like that in order to get a
Let me
full
ask
report.
this. Do you have a login yet for Neoserra?
No, I don't. I don't think I have one yet. Yeah, but I will
we'll
have
probably
one.
start there, Jeff. We'll probably
Oh.
start there.
Yeah, yeah. I gotta log on to everything. So yeah, but I'm looking for what I'm doing now. I love the community that I'm in. So I'm off to a great start.
Great. Well,
It's
thank
really
you for
amazing.
joining. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, Yemisi Anderson.
You pronounced it right. Look at that. So I have been using Neoserra for just a couple of months. I've been with the SBDC at SIU for a little over a year now, but somebody else was entering in my Neoserra notes. And so now I do them myself. It's not too terrible. It's an interesting system. That's what I'll say about that. I feel like I navigated fairly well. And what I don't know, I asked my supervisor, and he helps me kind of navigate the system. Not too bad.
All right, great. Well, thanks for joining. Hey, buddy. Okay, Brenda Henderson.
Good afternoon. I am a community navigator, actually, and I work with Yemisi at the Small Business Development Center in Carbondale at SIU. And I do not have a Neoserra login, as I am not technically an advisor, but I am looking at a couple positions that I'd like to apply for. So I would be using Neoserra in that case. And so I'm just here to get a bird's eye view of this and also help better understand what my peers operate in.
Great, sounds good. Thanks, Brenda.
Thank you.
Kay, I'm assuming Kay Medina?
That's me. I'm Kay Medina. I'm an administrative assistant at the SBDC at Harper College. I've been working on Neoserra. I actually have worked at the SBDC twice, but the second time since 2020. I take Neoserra as a personal challenge, and I will win.
Join the fight.
Mhm.
Join the fight. Love it. Thank you, Kay.
You're welcome.
Laverne Thomas, welcome. I know that you're new. You may not have a login either, but hello.
Yes, hi. I do have a login. Jenny set it up for me last week. So, hi everyone. I'm Laverne Thomas. I'm with the SBDC with the South Shore Chamber of Commerce in Chicago, and I'm a business advisor, and I've been in this role for 2 weeks. So I am on here to learn about this amazing system that I've heard about.
Thank you, Laverne. Welcome.
Thank you.
Graduate to be Amy Lambert. Oh, Amy.
Hi.
Hi.
I am a huge fan of the Neoserra, especially since Jenny Malloy came on board and is there to really back up whenever I come to a real knot in the mess. The thing about Neoserra that I really, really love is that it takes no prisoners. It has a way for you to put your information in. It is the same every single time. And if you remain dedicated to putting your information in at the end of every single day, at the end of every single interaction, all of those interactions will come back and will give you all of the kudos that you need to have to know that you have done a phenomenal job in this role. It will track your milestones. It will give you the reports that you need to show how effective you are as an advisor and how effective your centers are overall. It's just about understanding and giving that dedication, continual effort towards Neoserra, and it will pay off for you.
Thank you, Amy. Okay, we have 2 recent people that joined. Just to give you a heads up. We're just asking what your role is in the network and how long you have utilized Neoserra and how comfortable you feel utilizing the system. So Mara Downs.
Hi, I'm Maura Downs. I'm with the Women's Business Development Center. I've been here since December. I'm in the same boat as Catherine. We have a data manager who puts our information into Neoserra from a different system. So we're kind of limited in how much Neoserra we use, but I do use it for, the only reason I use it is for bid match. I do go in there for that. And then I leave everything else up to our data team, but I would like to learn more. So thanks.
Great, thank you. Miranda Adams.
Hi, my name is Miranda. I'm with the South Shore Chamber of Commerce. I'm just an administrative assistant. I haven't had a ton of experience with Neoserra. I have done one training session before, but I haven't really had the opportunity to utilize it as much. So yeah, just really hoping to pick up some tips and learn how to navigate it.
Great, thank you. And Brittany, do you use Neoserra at all? You want to share?
I have limited experience with Neoserra. Currently, I'm a program coordinator at the Joseph Center, and so I primarily use it to search for clients to see if they're actually in the system or not. I've also created some profiles for clients. I've done event setup, and there's a few reports I ran. Took me a while to figure that out, but that's pretty much the overview of how I really interact with the system.
Great. Join us Thursday when we tackle filters, because they can definitely give you a run for your money.
Okay.
Christy knows that. Christy, we talk about those filters all the time.
Sounds good.
Okay, well, Jenny, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. Everyone, please feel free to raise a hand so that we can answer questions as we go along, or you can save them for the end.
Will you allow me to screen share, please? I can talk about it. Nobody will see it though.
Try now. You should be able to share
Yeah.
now for me.
Ericka, are we going to record?
Okay, it's recording.
Okay, so again, welcome to this session of Basic Neoserra Entries and Usage. I'm glad that you could all join us today. Ericka mentioned it. This session is going to be about navigation, finding your way around the system, your standard entries that are pretty basic that you'll be doing right away. And then I'm going to really look at setting options. I think it's something that's kind of been glazed over in the past that you might not know all of your different options when it comes to different settings. So we'll start at the login page. Recently, we have started using the public notices. Some of you may have seen that. We typically utilize it to give you a reminder of when Neoserra is going to close for the month. We know that that date can fluctuate depending on where the fifth lands or if there's some other, event or something going on where we may need to push that date back. So if you're ever concerned or want to know for sure when Neoserra is going to be closing, this public notice should provide that information for you. It'll log in eventually.
As you can see, the system is super fast.
Yes.
They pass you by.
So once you log in, you come to what's called your dashboard. If you have a scorecard assigned to your account, this is where you will see it. I have I have 4 assigned, and I can scroll through those and I have a year-over-year comparison. Typically your goals that are assigned to your center will be assigned to your dashboard. From here, a very helpful page is going to be your home page. So this Neoserra logo in the top left is actually a link. When you click on it, it's going to take you to your home page. Now, mine looks very boring because I'm not an advisor and I don't have a lot of entries, but if you go to your home page, you'll see your activity here. You'll have a stream of activity, you'll have your center information. The information over here is specific to you as an advisor. Some of it is specific to you as an advisor, others is your center as a whole. This stream over here, you can also change your view if you have a preference of seeing it differently or you want that detail. You could click on this toggle here to change your view. I do have to jump back and forth. I apologize because I don't have an advisor account, so I'm missing some information I want to share with you. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, so over here on the right-hand side, when you go to your homepage, you'll have a lot of information about your center. It'll look similar to this. So it's going to give you your active clients, DLA active clients if you have a PCHEC center, long-term clients, my active clients, open pre-clients, and then a little e-center section down here that's going to show you new signups. All of these blue numbers are hyperlinks, so you can click on them to see the detail behind that. I always express that new signups is a big one. You know, these are going to be unactioned new signups. So that means that you haven't gone in and either accepted or rejected those new clients. And we'll look at that some more later in this presentation.
And before you close that out totally, Jenny, I just want to remind for those that are newer, DLA is the funding source that is for our procurement technical assistance centers. So if you do not see DLA and you do not have a procurement technical assistance center, that would be why. Long-term clients are clients that have had 5 or more hours of one-on-one advising. That is the definition of a long-term client.
Okay. And this can look different for everyone. Depending on what is at your center, you may see more or less of what you're seeing in this example. So yeah, don't be alarmed if you don't have one of these listed on your page. Okay, so moving on to just standard navigation, you're going to have your operation bar up here, regardless of what page you're on within Neoserra. I'm sure everyone is familiar with the search functionality. It can be a little tricky. While it's not case sensitive, it is spelling specific. So if you have a client with a tricky name, you know, I've spent a lot of time trying to find some clients. So you can search by email. You can search by a first name, a last name, the company name. There's just a lot of different options. I'm going to go ahead and search myself.
You cannot search by client number though. Don't ask me why. You cannot search by client number. Just don't try.
No,
Sorry.
It's going to be more based on information within the record or in the client name. So whatever you search though, anything that matches that search criteria will pull up. So you might have several options to choose from. In this case, I've got some accounts set up to go over. But one thing to note is these little icons. So if it's a building, that's a client record. So if you search someone and it comes up and has a building next to it, that means it's a client record. The
Jenny,
little person.
can I add something? This is Marty.
Yes.
When you search, like for this one that says IESBGA 2022 test client and then the numbers, if that shows up in the search box, you have to take those numbers out.
Yes.
To find it.
That is correct. Yeah. So that's a very good point. So if I do, right here. So it's not even going to pull it up now. It's going to be difficult. Here. So if I do that and click on it and try to search, it's going to give me an error. That's a very good point to bring up, Marty. I struggled with this for a long time when I first started. So if you remove those leading numbers, it'll pull up your record. And that's kind of back to Ericka's point. If I were to just put in those numbers, it would bomb out as an error also. So just back to the icons, this is going to be a client record, contact record, and then an advisor record. So the little suitcase is an advisor, a person is contact, building is your client. Okay, so just briefly going over your menu selection. So under the view, this is what Neoserra considers objects. So these are the things within your database, your clients, your contacts, your centers, your advisors, all of your information within here. And then they consider the activities, things that you're going to do with those objects. Are you going to create a session for them or enter a milestone or capital funding? That's what you'll find under here. Manage, under this one, typically what you would use is either scorecards, saved filters, or custom reports. I don't think a lot of people utilize custom reports, but we can talk more about that tomorrow if we have people that have interest in that. Saved filters is one that that we will probably touch on tomorrow as well. And then of course, help. I think a lot of people just overlook this. This is where you can find all of your FAQs. I will give you a little bit of a notice though, like the way Neoserra has their FAQs is it provides information for administrator mode also. So you might come across an FAQ and you're trying to follow it and the steps and you're like, I don't have access to this, or I don't have that. Well, some of the stuff is administrator only. So if you ever run into that, feel free to reach out and I can help you there. Another great thing that I think people don't realize that we have access to is this Neoserra webinars. They do have live webinars that you can sign up for, but they also have on demand. There's a lot of different topics that you can go register and get access to those pre-recorded sessions. Again, I always say they're really great for navigating the system and showing you the system capabilities, but some of the applications that they present really don't apply to how we utilize the system, but it'll still give you some general knowledge on how to navigate. And then of course, we have our knowledge base under help. I've been trying to, so right now it automatically pulls up in date range. You can click on any of these blue links to alphabetize it. I've been trying to categorize these so that it's easier for you to find what information you're looking for. As you know, we've been doing a lot of milestone reviews. So we have an entire section on milestone entries, attribution verification requirements, things of that nature. Anytime you're in doubt, I would take a quick look at knowledge base just to see if what you're looking for is in there. And then I don't use anything below contact support. I think that might be some of that for PTAC. But if you do have questions, you can reach out to me. You don't have to go directly to support. I might have the answer for you. And if not, I can work with them to get the answer. And then this trusty, this history, I don't know if anyone uses this or knows it's there, but I'm guilty. I love it. It kind of gives you a snapshot of all the places that you've visited recently. So if you're working and you're bouncing back and forth between completing, you know, a milestone or a capital funding for an account, you need to go back to the account record, you can just quickly go here and click on it and it will take you right to the record. So you don't have to do that search again.
Or use multiple tabs in your browser because you know that you need to find it.
Right, have 5 sessions open. I think we all do that. And then of course you have your calendar. The Neoserra calendar, it captures your Neoserra scheduled appointments. There is an option to synchronize this calendar with your calendar. So we can go over that when we look at preferences. I think that is the next thing we're going to cover. So
does anyone have any questions? I'm sorry, does anyone have any questions right now?
Is there something in the chat?
Are there issues within the, you know, between the objects and the activities or things that you get hung up on when you're utilizing the system? Okay. Okay, Jenny.
All right. So if you go over to your name on the top right, you'll see a few different options. We're going to look at preferences. So the first setting here is account settings. This goes over your email, your contact information. You do have the option to set a default counseling area. So if you are an individual that works primarily with business plan or you know, whatever that topic may be, you can choose your default counseling area and it will pull up whenever you create a session. Again, additional assistance, you have that same option. And if you do have dashboards assigned, you can click here to reorder those if you want to see them in a different order on your dashboard. The next setting options are display options. So this is all pretty much default. One that I found interesting, which we saw on that previous page, was my open clients. So this is kind of a setting where, and this is advisor specific, so it's not going to show your whole center, it will only show you. But if say you have, you give yourself 60 days to follow up with the client, or the client says, I'm going to get back with you next month. you can set this to whatever time frame you want. And then when that displays my open clients on that previous, on here, my open clients, that's telling you that you have clients that you have not touched base with in whatever time frame you set here. So if you have that set for 30 days, it's going to tell you you have X amount of clients that you have not had a session with or communicated with in the last 30 days. So that's kind of a nice little tool. Instead of having to go out and try to filter and see when your last counseling session was, you can kind of capture it all there and you have that hyperlink to go right to it. And then of course, just some standard display settings. You can do dark mode if you like. I'm typically a dark mode user, but when I switch this, it's not very appealing. I don't recommend it. So here is where you can sync your calendar. So there's two different options. I'm not going to go into great detail about it, but I do have some FAQs on it. I have helped one individual within the network sync their calendar and they seem to like it. What it does is it will send out your Neoserra calendar invites, but it does not bring anything in. So it's not like your Neoserra calendar in the Neoserra system is going to show anything that you might have in your Outlook. It's a one-way. So it's going to send all of your Neoserra stuff out to your Outlook calendar, which is kind of nice. I mean, you could still collect it all in one place, but it's just not going to import any of your Outlook or Google appointments into the system. So Neoserra email, this is where you can set up a signature, any type of email that you want whenever you're going to email from the system. And we're going to go over that a little bit more, I think, later in today's session, as far as sending emails from the system. Postbox. So this is a big topic. I know a lot of people utilize Postbox. Postbox can be your best friend and it can be your enemy at the same time. We have a lot of sessions get created, I guess, unwarranted. It's the best word for it, but here's where you can find your Postbox email address. If you copy this and you want to blind copy it when you're communicating with your clients, it will create a session in Neoserra as long as the email that you send your email to for the client is tied to a client record. It will create a session. It can be tied to the client record either on the client record, or it can be the email of a contact that is linked to your client record. If you have a contact created with that email, but it's not linked to your client record, it will create an inquiry for that contact. It's not going to create a session because that contact is not linked to a client. And then if you utilize an email that is not in the system, it creates an abandoned session. So it really doesn't know what to do with it. It's like, I don't have a contact to create an inquiry. I don't have a client record to create a session. So it just hangs out there. So we want to avoid that. And we'll get into creating contacts and linking them later as well, because I think it's important to, know how to link them, how to create them, and you can have more than one email assigned to a contact. I know I've talked to a lot of advisors that say, well, I have some clients that have 2 different emails and they're always sending me from different emails and I never know which one to use. Well, we can put both of those emails on that contact record so that regardless of which one you utilize, it's going to come into the system clean and create that session for you. So on that note, you can also predetermine how you want your Postbox sessions to come in. Contact time, I think the minimum requirement is 10 minutes, so you can have it assigned to 10 minutes. I've talked to some people that said, well, sometimes, excuse me, that'd be default. I'm sorry, session type, you're only going to have administrative and follow-up as your option. If it's an initial session and you utilize Postbox, you'll need to go in and make sure that you update that to the initial session. You should be updating anything anyway, but default origin or funding source, I would just leave that as the client's default. And then counseling area. So this is the one I was alluding to. So some people will work all day sending out information related to one of these topics. So you could come in and modify this before you do your work for the day. So at least that portion of your session comes in accurate. You don't have to go back and make any updates. And then you can choose if you want your sessions to come in reportable or not. If you're working on an administrative, just sending out notes to update, that they're not reportable. you can go in and remove this checkbox so that you don't have to go back in and update it again, because you have to do those on an individual basis. Any questions on any of these preference settings, from account settings, display, calendar, email, or postbox?
Jenny, I had a question in regards to 2 email addresses for one client. You may have answered this, but do you put them both in and just separate with a comma, or is there a different?
So on the contact record, there is a secondary email option within the contact record. So you can have essentially, if you have one contact for a client record, you could essentially have 3 emails, because you can assign one email to the client record itself, and then the contact that's linked to the client record can have 2 emails.
Okay.
I have had other advisors say that they were able to put in the email and then separate it, but I haven't tested it to see if it works. So we could, I could test that and let you know.
I just want to stress the importance of, we understand how valuable Postbox is if used properly. It decreases the amount of administrative time and input time for you as an advisor. You can simply put your Postbox address into your email and it will automatically transfer. Just be very careful and make sure that the email address that you are linking to, that you have in the email, is actually connected, as Jenny said, either through the actual client record or one of the emails of the contact that is connected. If it does not, it does just sit out there in a different list because the center doesn't know where to assign it. So you're not getting credit for that because the system doesn't even know where to put it at. So it's very important to make sure that you verify and make sure that it made it to the client record at some point.
Ericka, this is Marty again. It sits in that sort of limbo space while so you can go back and review it and fix that.
Yes, you can. However, if we do it on the front end, I know it was in 3, maybe 4 digits, the listing that we saw of emails and Postbox emails that were in limbo. It was almost 1,000. So
yeah, it's an alarming number, but yes, you're right, Marty. If they were going back and doing the appropriate reviews, those would all fall off, because you do have the ability to go in and update it.
Best practice would be to just make sure that you're utilizing one of the emails that's with the record.
Right. Another thing to notate is, depending on what it is, but if you're doing a mass email, it's typically going to be non-reportable. We see some of those come through with 256 client records tied to it. And when that happens, it takes that 10-minute contact time and it times it by every client. So you're, reporting this huge number that is fictitious. So that's just another thing to notate. If you do need to utilize that for batching, it should always be non-reportable and administrative. Any other questions on this section before we move on?
Yes, I have a question. I just wanted to clarify. You said that when we are doing like the emails, they're not reportable and you enter them as administrative.
So it's going to be, what I was really talking about was informational, like mass emails. If you're sending out a communication that to all of your clients to just let them know about something, that's more of an administrative task. So if you're going to have multiple clients assigned to it, that needs to be administrative, non-reportable.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Okay. So we'll go ahead and move on if no one else has any other questions on the preferences. I know that this probably isn't applicable to a lot of people, but to some centers, they might have multiple centers assigned to them, especially with some of the centers that have closed this year. So if you are one of those centers, or if you have multiple centers, under your name, it lists the center that you're on. So right now I am with the lead center, but I have, of course, I'm an administrator, so you'll see a lot more. So I have the ability to switch centers to any of the centers on my list. When I do that, anywhere I go within the system, it's going to be focused solely on that center. So it's going to show me clients for that center, counseling sessions for that center. So it kind of hones in on that. So I don't have to try to filter to include those. So I'm not sure if it affects anyone in this group, but I just wanted to bring it up in case it did. Okay, so on center notes, we're going to go over to view centers. I'm not going to show any information. Here, I can go to the, I got it on public. Hold on here. Okay, so in everyone's center, you have your general information, obviously your address, the Illinois data, which we don't have anything in here, configuration and eCenter, but we're not with eCenter. So I'll use another center example. But for this one, I wanted to show you what we've added. We've added a section for the center director, whether the center is just an SBDC, an ITC, or PTAC, all that information will be loaded on each center. So if you were to go to a center and you wanted to contact the director, you could go to that center and find that information under Illinois data. I also wanted to show, I've noticed that a lot of people aren't familiar with the eCenter links. So if you go to your center within Neoserra, these different links will take you out to your individual eCenter. I know that we have a generic eCenter, but I think that causes a lot of confusion with our clients and they accidentally sign up with the wrong center. So if you have a link out there on your website or you have an email where you're sending a sign up link, you can use the link specific to your center so that when they go sign up, they for sure sign up under you. And you just have to copy it out of here. That's it. Takes you right to SIU Carbondale. This is their sign up page. So the client won't have to do any center selection. And I just recently I'm pretty sure I let everyone know, we did some updates to include the center logo. We've reworded it to call out the name of the center. Every center was kind of very generic, the same as the generic landing page. So a client might not really know whose center page they were on. To try to remove that level, make it a little more transparent. And then of course you have your training events link. We'll show you all the available training events for that center and be able to click to sign up. Another thing I wanted to cover on center setup is you have email templates within the system that you can utilize. You also can update your eCenter interface. So on the email templates, you have specific to eCenter and then specific to inside of Neoserra. This is the one that you probably would utilize the most, the eCenter email message templates. If it is in bold, those have been modified from the standard setting. So if you want to go in and modify your sign up confirmation, or if you want to, anything you want to modify, honestly, you can go in here and kind of look around and see all of the options. If you are missing that more option, let me know and I will change your account settings so that you have access to go in and look at your templates. But I think this is a really great way to customize what you're sending to the clients, make it, specific to your center, not just a generic message that can be utilized for all.
And I just want to add to be cautious if you utilize and have enabled both the Spanish version of Neoserra plus the English, and you change your default message and customize it, you have to go into Spanish as well and change the message. It will not automatically change it in both. And same, if you go into Spanish, you'll need to do that in English as well.
Correct. Thank you. So any questions on center settings or links? Nope. Okay, this is an easy group. So now I was just going to briefly go over new client creation, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, maybe. There's a couple different ways that you can create a new client. You can go to view clients and then choose your new option over here. It's a fairly simple task. You can assign the advisor that will own that client record. Company name, and then you have the option to make it a pre-client or client. I've had conversations with several centers to see if they utilize leaving records at pre-client. We couldn't come up with a good utilization for that. So it's typically going to be a client for your client type there. Of course, in business, pre-venture established, primary contact. You can have new or existing. In this case, I'm going to say that I have another business. So I'm going to grab that contact that's already in the system and assign it to this new client.
This is one of the biggest issues I think that there is with the system. If, like when Jenny just showed that, she put in her name again and saw that she already has a different account, so it was able to connect those. If you mistype it, if it's named, you know, Jay Malloy instead of Jenny Malloy, it's not going to be able to see that other account necessarily if there isn't any other identifiers. That's why we end up with duplicate accounts or 3 or 4 or 5. So it's very important to do a search before you add a new client with a number of different identifiers, as Jenny stated from the beginning, an email address, a phone number, a name, variations of the name, to make sure that there already isn't an account in the system for them. Also, beware on setting up a client, a new client, as opposed to a pre-client. If you're setting it up manually in this fashion, you need to have their request for counseling, their signed request for counseling 641 form. If you do not have that yet, you may forget to obtain that. So just make sure that if you don't have that yet, you either hold on putting them in the system, or you may want to mark it as pre-client until you get that piece of information uploaded into the system.
Yes, that's a good point. I'm always making assumptions, and then this client has their signed request for counsel.
I didn't see it, but okay.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's all great points. So then it takes you to this screen, and you'll need to put in some additional information. It auto-populated a lot from the contact record. Really, the more information that you can obtain, the better. Right now, the initial business status is marked as a pre-venture and company status is pre-venture. This will typically never change unless it's entered incorrectly from the beginning. If they're pre-venture, they're going to stay pre-venture. At some point, they may move into a startup in business, you know, less than a year. Or if they close, you could update it to that as well. And then once they surpass a year, that'll update also in the system. Now, if I am to mark this as a in business, I have to have a date established. You can't have a company in business without the date established. Again, if I have a client record that I'm creating that's in business, I have to have at least one employee. They can't operate without an employee. It could be a part-time employee or a full-time employee. You can see a lot of this this information is not required, but we do recommend, like I said, just get as much information as you can. It helps us run reports, hone in on you know, gender-owned businesses, whether they're veteran status, if they have disabilities. We have different programs where we try to really filter out some of that information, and a lot of the times it's missing. And I know that some clients don't want to share that information, but if you know, if they're willing, let's at least try to collect it. You have your default funding source down here. I should probably go make that required.
Well, yeah. And just to cover again for default funding source, Jenny, if you'll click on that drop down, DLA is again your procurement technical assistance center clients. SBA refers to your international trade center clients. I still have not gotten to the bottom of why we just didn't name that ITC from the beginning. One day I'll get the answer on that. And then of course, SBDC is for your SBDC clients. So If you only work in one program, then you're likely going to set your default up for that particular funding source, but just please keep that in mind. Some people say that they can't find a record, and I'd say 8 times out of 10, it's because it's a different funding source and they're not looking in that funding source.
Yep. So I think that's everything. So back to Ericka's note about having your request for consultation, that's where you're going to obtain your signature date. So if you met with them today and you got that, then you will come down here and you'll click. You have to click on the date. Otherwise it won't accept it. It wants to put a time in. It doesn't even put the right time in, but you do have to click on the calendar for it to accept the date. So I'm going to continue and see if I missed any fields, and I did. Yes, organization type is required. So this is your different options, corporation, all that. So now it takes me back to the contact record. And here's where we were talking about the secondary email address. If I had a second email, I could plug that in here. You know, if that contact has more than one that they utilize, that's where you would put this. These are all required, but they're complete with the previous contact. So now my client record is created. You'll see over here, after I created this client record, they're going, oh, wait a minute, you have some possible duplicates. It's for various reasons. It could be because I have an email match, I have an address match, a phone number match. You know, it's going to show you this on any client record if there's a possible duplicate. Sometimes they're legitimate and sometimes they're not. So just have a look. If it doesn't look right, send me a note and I can merge the records for you. So that's how you create and manually create a new client record. So let's look at a new client record that came in via eCenter. Did you have something to add, Ericka?
I was just going to say, make sure when you manually create a client record that you are uploading any additional documentation that they have shared with you or that you've collected in terms of their, of course, their request for consultation and signing it, because that form, that single form, covers the confidentiality between you and that client throughout your relationship, and it's necessary to have on file. It's what this program is based off of, is confidentiality. So very important to make sure that that is uploaded. I don't care if it's a picture, an image, if it's a PDF, but make sure that it is attached to the client record.
Yes, I'm sorry, I skipped over that. That's a great point. And that you'll have that ability on the client record itself down here under upload. So you can put your request for a consultation there. And not to muddy the water, but back to Ericka's point where she said that if you didn't have that signed agreement and you went in and set it up and you set them as a pre-client, you do have the ability to request an electronic signature through eCenter on those accounts. So I think it's the more email option and then online agreement request. So if you have, I know that you all receive missing signature. This is another way that you can communicate with your client that you need to get a signature on file. You can go to the client record and choose that more email and then online agreement request.
Jenny, I'm going to have you address this question really quick from David. He asked, so if we have an existing business that bought the address of an old client, do we notify you so that the duplicate no longer shows? Do you want to explain how we handle that?
Well, there's an option to hide the duplicate. I won't ever be able to remove it entirely, but when I do my analysis, I'm pretty detailed. I'll go in and look, what was the business type? What's the contact tied to the business? If I have any doubts whether they should be merged or not, I will reach out to that center or advisor that's on that account record just to make sure that it's not a duplicate. But in most cases, you can tell if it's really a duplicate or if it is someone that has just taken over a building that shares the same address of a previous client.
Right. We don't want to automatically assume that it's an immediate merge, because if it's someone that's buying an existing business, but I mean, they're a new owner that's unrelated, that is a new business start for that new person. So that is a new client record overall. So we have to tag the old or the victim record, as Neoserra calls it, a certain way so that the survivor record can actually support those milestones for the new. I know that's kind of morbid, victim and survivor, but Neoserra brings it out.
That is the way that they word it, yes. Yeah, there's definitely a high level of comparison that goes into that before we decide to merge any records. So, and if I don't know, I will be reaching out to you for further guidance. Okay, so moving on. So we're going to go to accepting a client that's signed up via eCenter. So a client goes out to your sign up link and you get a notification, or you've clicked on that link on your homepage to look at your new client signups, and this is one of them. So I'm getting these merge options because we share an address. So if you get a new client record and you see that these merge options, that's the system saying, hey, wait a minute, does this client already exist? So again, that's another check. You can go out to a different Neoserra session, search that client, or even click on these to go to them and do a little bit of an analysis on your own to see if it is indeed a duplicate, or if no, this is a new client. So I have the transfer option. I don't think others have that transfer option. It's because I'm an administrator, but typically you'll have accept or reject. When you accept the client, it's going to ask you a few questions. Do you want to convert to a client? Do you want to send a welcome email? So this welcome email kind of ties back to what we were showing you earlier on your center email templates. You can go in and create this welcome to the network. You've been accepted. If you choose to send the welcome email without modifying it, it's just going to send the generic template, which is fine, but this gives you an opportunity to customize it to you if you do want to utilize that. You would have to make that selection for it to send out though. And then you can do advisor assignment. And of course, it's going to stick with the center they signed up under. So I've accepted the client record. Please, everything. Oh, I need to update my funding source. Sorry, I'm going a little quick here.
While you're doing that, I'll talk more about that transfer and what you do if one needs to be transferred.
Okay, yes.
Being in a virtual environment and people seeing the training offerings throughout the network, throughout the state, oftentimes they will sign up for one of those trainings and also sign up as a client for that center when that is not the center that is geographically located closest to them. So we'll often get an email from a center or request saying, hey, we had this client sign up. Could you please transfer them to this center because that's closest to their location? And we'll go ahead and we handle that on our end. You also may have a client that just requests for certain reasons to transfer to another center, or not the client asking, but the center is asking. If they've been working with the center, we do ask that there is some type of documentation, an email or something that shows that the client is requesting that transfer, so that we just don't transfer it to the other center and there not be some type of trail documentation to show that that was at the client's request. So if you do have a client that is wanting to be transferred to another center, please make sure that there's some type of documentation in the system in their uploaded documents or within an administrative entry, something that shows that they asked for that request so that we don't have to go back and forth. We can go ahead and initiate that transfer.
Right. And in some cases, it might be an older client that was with an inactive center now. We don't need a client request for that. We'll transfer that out, obviously. And then if you have a client that hasn't worked with their center assignment, say for 6 years, it's just no activity, we'll also move those without a client request. So it's going to be the clients that are very active with the center and you ask to transfer, those will be the ones that we do request the client to send in so we can document that. So now I have this client created, and that was really the gist of it. You can go from here and whatever you do to reach out to the client and set up your initial advising session. I do want to remind everyone that there needs to be one initial counseling session on each client record. That can be one for SBDC and one for SBA, but you cannot have more than one for each funding source or it bombs out and SBA goes crazy. So just to notate that. And
also make sure on the eCenter signups, they're answering a lot of questions that you haven't seen their information yet. So when you go to accept them, either review that information at that time or make sure that that's part of your initial advising session with that client. They may feel that they're in business and may have put it just because they filed for an LLC or a DBA. However, they haven't met any of the other requirements that are in our definition for what a true in-business client is. If that is the case, you need to use that opportunity to go in and change that information prior to there being an upload from us to SBA system, because that's one of the things that we cannot change. It's locked as soon as we send that information to them. So make sure that you're going over the information that they submitted. If they mark that they are an export business, but they said that they export to the United States, that will end up being an error on our end because you cannot export to the United States from said United States. If they choose no country at all, that ends up becoming an error, and the system will not kick it back as an error to them on its own. It's not that intuitive. So that is why it is vitally important that you're looking at the information they submit on eCenter signups. If you're entering it manually and you've already had a conversation with them, you'll know what information is accurate, what's not, because you're the one putting it in. You need to take extra time when it is an eCenter sign up to make sure that the information that they feel is correct is actually accurate.
yes, very good point, because we do see a lot of misentries, even though they're entering data for their own business. So I quickly wanted to show you on a client record. I'm sure you're all familiar with the activity summary. It shows you the number of counselings for that client, how many initial, how many are follow-up, how many other would be your administrative or update, and then the complete contact time. You can filter this. Right now it's showing all for this client. You can go in and look at just this month. It gives you a lot of different options on date filtering. So that's just a nice little snapshot. If you're looking for particular sessions and there's a bunch, you can hone in on it through the activity summary filtering. I think that's all. So quickly, I can show you, I'm sure you're all familiar with how to create new sessions. So you can create a new session from a client record under new counseling. You can go to view activity counseling and new, or you can create a session via postbox. Those are typically your 3 activities that create a counseling session. Let's look at contact records. Sorry, we're running a little out of time. I want to leave some time for questions.
Is that my fault? I'm sorry.
No, I'm long-winded today. So here, if you go to view contacts, this is where you can create a new contact. Just as easy as selecting new. Once you've created that contact, you will need to go to the client record and link a contact. So this is my test account. I have 1 contact on there now. If there were multiple contacts, it would show. If I want to link a new one, I simply click link. I'm going to link this record also. And now if I email any of these emails via postbox, it'll create a session for this client record. So I've seen some advisors create the contact and then forget to link it. So you have to link it to that record. If there's been an update to a client record, this can be a bit confusing because you cannot unlink this without linking a new one. So say this person left the company and they've got a new person that needs to be added, you'll have to go in and add them, and then you can edit it, change the primary, and unlink. But you'll have to make that change first, or you'll feel like you're stuck with that contact record. Okay, advisors. Make sure I get through all of these. I'll just go to Ericka. But advisor records are loaded with information also. I went to your contact. I gotta click the advisor record. So if you are a network coordinator or a center director, or if you just want to individually go out and look at your activity for a certain time frame, you can go to your advisor record. It's going to give you that stream view of all of the contacts that you've had dated, and it's going to show you the client contact information as if it were on the client record. Here we're looking at Ericka's past 5 years. We can hone in on this year or this month if you're looking for your monthly activity to fill out a time card or just show, what you've been working on. It's going to give you your number of counseling and all of your contact time, as well as list any milestones in that time frame. You'll also see your clients. So there's 25 clients assigned to Ericka. If you go to your record and you want to just look at your clients, you can go to your advisor record, click on your clients, and there's your list of clients that you are the primary advisor on. I know that a lot of times you'll work with clients that you're not primary advisor, and that's fine. They won't show in this list, but you can find them other ways, especially if you go through counseling filter and choose yourself, they'll be listed there. Am I missing something on advising there? I don't think so. I got just a few more things. I was just going to go over creating milestone and capital funding entries. That is an activity. So you go to activity, milestones, or capital funding, whichever you need to create. Pretty basic, and then choose new. There is a lot of information in knowledge base pertaining to capital funding and milestone entry requirements, guidelines. I highly recommend that if you're uncertain if what you're uploading is going to meet requirements, please hop out here, take a look, read through it. The attribution verification is going to be the biggest one. We have to have this required language. Tomorrow, I think we're going to go over creating economic impact survey within the system that will automatically generate milestones for you. So that will include this language. But yeah, this is just a great resource when it comes to milestone requirements.
Will you click on the new business start one just for a second?
Yeah.
Just so we can show how, if you look towards the bottom of this entry, it says nearly every started a business milestone should also create. There's a number of other milestones that you may be able to create. However, just putting in a starting a business milestone does not create a capital funding or a change in staff. As Jenny said earlier, if you started a business, somebody has to be working there. That is another entry though. That is a separate milestone entry. They had to have put some money into it, whether they filed for their DBA or their LLC. I mean, that is capital funding. That's equity that they've put in there. So just make sure that when you put in a milestone that you make sure that if there are other milestones that are connected to that, that those are individually put in as well.
Yes, good point. Okay, the other two other things, and then we will open it to discussion. I was going to go over narratives. I'm sure everyone's familiar with activity narratives. So right now, I think the only requirement for that is a monthly CARES Act narrative entry. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that is the only required when we do ask for a quarterly narrative for your core funding. However, make sure that, I mean, we're not asking for things that are already in the system in terms of number of people you advised or whatever. If there's a special project that you put on, or you had a training during that reporting period that went really well, and you're going to, it's allowed you to expand or bring in more clients, those are the type of things that are generally not found in your other activity that's reported. So that's the purpose of the narrative section. But for the core funding, we do ask for that monthly just because it's supplemental funding and we have a number of partners and stakeholders that want to see how we're using that. That's why that narrative is required on a monthly basis, because so many new initiatives have been introduced into the network and, adding people for additional outreach, et cetera.
Yep, on the CARES, yep. And then one other thing was I was going to go over professional development. So professional development as it ties to your scorecard, the only thing that your scorecard is going to capture is certification and continuing education. Those are goals that are outlined in the contract for each center. But there are additional things that you can capture here. One big one that we've talked about previously is that your administrative time. That administrative time might fall outside of your duties within the network, or it's something that you can't tie to a specific client record, or you just don't have anywhere to put that. So this is a really good utilization. You can assign the hours to the minutes. You can put your little narrative in the notes so that you can tell what that time was spent doing. And then it makes your whole time and effort sheet tie back in together with your advising and your admin time.
And that's helpful for you as well to keep track. Okay, I only did this much advising this month. What else did I do this month? Oh, I had this special project. We had this initiative to get out this, business forecast survey, or we did some canvassing of neighborhoods in order to do some outreach, et cetera, those type of things. So that way you also know, and you can run a report to see when you did certain activities that fall outside of the normal buckets.
Yes, absolutely. So that was all I had on my list to cover today. Was there anything that you wanted me to go over, Ericka, that I did not touch base on, or does anyone have any questions?
I don't think we have a whole lot of time, and these are things we can do individually, and that's just going through when you put in a new client record, or what type of information makes an advising record, complete. One thing that I'll just say without us going into each of those things, because we can work on those one-on-one with a lot of the newer folks in the network, is understand the purpose of this system. And it is to tell the story, and not only to the state office, not only for you yourself, but for our other stakeholders. This is the activity that we're doing. This is the help that we're providing, the assistance. When it comes to, we have this, Jenny has up now just an advising session, and we put these leads in the notes section because this is the type of information that if you're meeting with a client, this is the type of information we need to see. I use this example often, even though it's as morbid as the victim survivor thing, but if you get hit by a bus today and someone has to come in and take over as the advisor for this client, they need to be able to go back to previous sessions and understand what has been worked on already, what activity has taken place, what the conversations are, so that they don't have to ask the client to start over and we're just starting from scratch. You could say, hey, I've read through the notes. I see this is where we're at, let's go ahead and keep working on this. So make sure that it tells a story. What happened in the session? Analysis of the problem to be solved. What actions are taken once the problem is identified, and how are you following up? And following up is very important, because if we don't see that there's follow-up, we know that we give clients homework all the time, and we need to make sure that we're clear on our notes. You could even set up a follow-up session once you save your entry, but to make sure that we're holding them accountable and we're staying engaged with them, because we all know life happens, and it's just important to make sure that we can go in. And I can, we get feedback in the state office. A client will say, well, I haven't heard from such and such advisor. I've been working with them and I haven't heard anything. It's for us to be able to support the activity that you have done as well, to say, hey, well, it looks like they've reached out to you a couple of times. You had a follow-up session on this day and they weren't able to contact you. They've reached out a couple of times. I've seen emails. So we have something to go off of as well. It hasn't been said yet, and I think pat on my back for not saying it until 5:13. If it is not in Neoserra and if it is not accurate, it does not exist. You can submit time and effort forms. You can tell me that you've done 100 hours of advising this month. If it's not in the system, you're not going to get credit for it. There's just no way for us to support that statement without having the activity in the system.
Thanks, Mark.
Yep, that was Mark shining
Hey,
through.
Joanne, I get 2 points for taking this long.
Yeah. Back to what you had said earlier, we see all too often the notes section is just really lacking. In some cases, it's been blank. I think that's a disservice to yourself and to your colleagues. You know, if an advisor needs to jump in and try to assist in your absence, that's going to be really their only resource to know where you are with that client. So it's just very important. You don't have to write a novel, but give some good insight. On that note, you made me think of one other thing. Now I'm going to do it, jump all around, right? If you're on a client record, you have the option to add a sticky note. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. So you can add a little sticky note here and you can just say, you know, maybe it's something you want to share with your colleagues and say that, you know, this client is very difficult or doesn't understand certain aspects of this, or we've covered this, you know, kind of highlights something very important about that client so they don't have to dig through all those notes and find it. You could put it here. You can even create the sticky note for yourself if you want to make a reminder that, oh man, Dave is really hard to work with. You could put that on there and you can make it private to yourself if you don't want to share that with everyone else. So that's a good option to keep little notes in there so you're not always flipping back through.
Many an advisor in other programs, if you're referring them to an ITC or to a PTAC, having that heads up on a client is very much appreciated. And, you know, it's very hard to go through years of notes if that's what's in there. So those sticky notes, yes, as Jenny said, it's important for yourself, but also for another advisor that you may be working jointly with.
That's all I really had. I don't know if there are any questions in the chat, Ericka, or if anyone has anything they would like to ask now.
I think, oh, yes, if it isn't accurate, you're right, Brittany. I don't know what I said. It's been a long day. I don't know. Oh, David, I'm sorry about the buses. I've handled everything to that, but now David's going to worry about crossing the street in buses. I know I use that all the time, but it's like, I don't know what else to say. And then I think of that.
I like to say if I win the lottery and never come back. It's a much happier ending.
You are glass half full.
Yeah.
Is there anything that anyone saw today that they weren't previously aware of, especially those that have used the system for a while? That's good.
It was a very basic tutorial, but it sounded like we had a mix of different levels that were in attendance. So some of you, it might have just been a refresher.
You know, it really tells the history, the story. You got to tell that everything needs to link together. We were talking about not really embellish it, but actually make sure you pull those actual details out and add them to the top. I guess is my main take from today. It was a good session. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Ericka.
Thanks, Earl.
Anyone else have any questions or thoughts?
Joanne here. I guess one thing I really didn't even realize was available was that time frame that you could put on clients. So if you haven't touched base with them or had any contact, you know, for a certain period of time, you can have them kind of come up as a reminder.
And how long have you been using the system, Joanne?
Gosh, it's been 9 years, I guess.
See, there's always something that this system, and I mean, I just to give a little more context behind it, there are a number of things. I've mentioned it once. Neoserra is not the most intuitive system. I think it does a good job of at least capturing the information as long as we put it in there accurately. However, there are many things, such as the example of if a client signs up through eCenter and they choose that they're an exporter, but then they don't choose any countries, we would expect that the system would default and say, hey, sorry, we can't save this. Here's an error. You need to choose a country. We have talked with Outreach Systems, who is the vendor of Neoserra, a number of times. We always seem to try to come up with workarounds for some of the things that we don't feel the system does. And we've even had meetings with other programs in other states who also utilize the Neoserra system. So I know that a lot of times there's frustration when the system just doesn't seem to do things that we would expect it to do. Please know that Jenny and I understand wholeheartedly And we try very hard to work with the vendor to make changes to the system that to make it work better for us. Sometimes we're successful, sometimes we are not, but it doesn't mean that we don't want to continue hearing when there are issues or you have a suggestion on, you know, how it could work better. We definitely pass that along.
Absolutely, yeah. And your frustration is warranted. I mean, this is stuff that I love, and I still find roadblocks and get aggravated trying to navigate or get it to do what I want it to do. So don't get too discouraged, but know that I'm always here to help. So.
And know that for the newbies that are just now have just now received their login or will be getting their login soon, highly advise you to look at those Neoserra trainings that Jenny pointed to at the beginning. And then, of course, with Jenny, I would say you should probably schedule a group session since we have a number of people, even on this call, that are new. So I'd say Lydia and Laverne and others, I would probably schedule a group one in order to go through it.
Yep, absolutely. I'm available for that or any one-on-one anytime.
And we even plan on doing videos. Jenny,
me
on doing some videos just to always have them out there, because I'm a visual person. Someone can tell me something 10 times, I have to see it. And then I actually have to go through it and try it on my own in order for it to stick. So we are cognizant of that, and we're working to provide some additional training aids as well that will be out there for you to utilize at any time, because, you know, I don't remember what I ate for dinner last night. So there are many times I forgot how to change my preferences for my dashboard so that I had 2022 at the top instead of the 100 and some.
I think I saw you changing that when I showed it.
I did. So, I mean, but we want to make sure that we're continuing to create, and we'll be reaching out to centers and asking, what are those videos that you want to see first? What are things that you keep having to go back to the FAQs or ask questions on or try to refresh your memory on, so that we make sure we're getting those out first?
Yeah, I want to make sure that the content is useful and helps you be more efficient, for sure. That's the point. I'm welcome to any feedback. So if you don't want to say something here, shoot me an email. I think you all have my email and know where to find me.
I think, can I add something? I think my favorite part of this was when we discovered about the mailbox, that you can CC to your mailbox, because we have a couple of grad assistants that work with us also. And I've given them my mailbox number if they're doing something for me, so that then I can review it to make sure it was put in correctly.
That's a good idea. Yeah, because you won't get that message.
That's right.
Yeah.
Saved a lot of time, because we used to copy and paste.
Oh,
right.
And so it saved a lot of time.
Yeah, and for all the negative that the post box can bring if it's not utilized correctly, we are very aware that it saves a ton of time if it is used correctly. So we keep it enabled, and we just keep trying to educate, and, you know, when we find errors, make sure we reach out so it can get corrected. Got 7 minutes, 7 whole minutes.
I could talk for 7 more minutes. I mean,
she could. She could.
Might not be about Neoserra though.
How many of you are planning to join the Neoserra session tomorrow? Okay. Tomorrow will be a little more in depth and talk more about how this goes to your point, Chris, pulling information out of the system. We put information in all the time. How do we pull that story out so that we can use it to share with our stakeholders, et cetera, and so that we can be cognizant ourselves of what we're doing? I mean, if I ask you right now, what is your percentage of in-business clients versus pre-venture? A lot of folks would say, I don't know. I can tell you what I think based on who I advise, but if you have other people in your center advising as well, you don't have that. So those are the types of things that you can pull, create reports for in the system and pull out so that you're aware of who you're serving, what the mix is, the makeup, how other, if you're the center director and you have others that are providing advising services, checking in to see how many clients they currently have on their roster that they're advising, how many hours they've put in for the month or whatever time period you want. Using that when you're meeting with staff in the center to give an overview of where things are at. So there's a lot of information that can be pulled out, and that's the type of thing that we'll focus on along with surveys tomorrow. Okay, well, if there are no other questions, Jenny, thank you so much. I can't say it enough. She's been a tremendous addition to the state office, and having someone that's focused just on data integrity and helping to make sure that the system is working for us as best as possible. Thank you, Jenny, for all that you do and for all the one-on-ones that you do with the network. I know they appreciate your thoroughness and your responsiveness. So really appreciate that. Thank you all for joining today. Welcome again, newbies. Hopefully this did not scare you off. We'll get through it. Don't you worry. And you guys, it's after 5. So enjoy your evening and we will see you all tomorrow. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Good night.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.